Hello, friend. Today we are talking about this question: should pastors be lonely? And before I get into answering that question, I want to explain to you a little bit about what's going on here. If you are watching this on YouTube, you may be under the impression that this is a podcast or a video series about community, and you are right. However, if you are listening on Worship Leader Weekly, you might be thinking that this is a podcast or a topic about worship leadership. And again, you are right. So I have two different channels and of teaching that I like to pursue on a weekly basis. One is in worship leadership and the other is on YouTube. And so if you are watching this, there is also a podcast called The Jason Hunley Show that's out there in the interwebs, and you can find the same teaching there as well. I want to resource people to be well connected within their churches. I want to equip leadership with the tools that they need in order to do that well. I want to help lay people within the church in order to connect really well. And I'm also a worship leader, and so I'm very passionate about training other worship leaders and helping them out. And occasionally, those two topics seem to intersect. And so that's what you're getting today, is you're getting a little bit of me double dipping in my content creation. But I'm also, I really do think that what I have to say in regards to community today and what I have to say to worship leadership and church staff, they are connected and they are beneficial. And this is going to happen quite a bit. So just prepare yourself. Some weeks, if you're checking out what's going on both channels, you're going to see the same content in both places. But let's get to the question at hand. And but one more thing before we get to me answering the question that I want to talk to you about. I'm going to give you access to a free resource. It'll be in the description, the comments below, somewhere below the entertainment that you're getting from this, down beneath, you'll have access to a link, or you can just go to jasonhunley.com and have access to it. And it's a connection assessment. I think that one of the best things that you can do is take stock of how well you're connecting inside your church. And it's a little quiz that you can give yourself to figure out how well you're doing at connecting with others. And then, in addition to that, if you go and download that free resource, I will also give you something else for free, and that is a 31-day, 1 month, 1 full month's worth of steps that you can take towards better community. It really does not take a lot of time, and it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it takes some consistency in order to grow community inside your church and in your life. And so I've put together a resource, 31 days, step-by-step guide. Some days it's just as simple as reading the thing and then just trying to exhibit generosity for a day, for example. And then some other days I'm going to give you assignments. Like one day you get a mason jar and you cut up strips of paper, and then you write down the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control on those slips of paper, and you put it in the mason jar. And then every day after that, you pick out one of the fruits of the Spirit, and you think, today I'm going to be love. Today I'm going to be self-controlling. Okay? And you wouldn't think that all of those things have to do with community building. There are some very specific community building tasks that you will be given in the 31-day step to better community worksheet that I'll give you, but everything works together as a whole, and you will see that if you download that resource. So go to jasonhunley.com, download the connection assessment, and it will automatically email that to you, as well as the 31 days to better community. Now, to the question at hand: should pastors be lonely? If you just signed in to figure out the answer to this question, I'm going to give you the answer very quickly. No. Pastors should not be lonely. Unfortunately, I have met a lot of lonely pastors. And so if pastors shouldn't be lonely. I've met a lot of lonely pastors. What's the problem here? What's the disconnect? Why would pastors, if they're not supposed to be lonely, why are so many pastors lonely in ministry? Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you're suspicious that your pastor might be lonely in ministry. If you're suspicious of that, I would go and ask him, have you ever felt lonely in ministry? Here's some stories. Pastors don't often get to talk about that with people in their congregation. It can be a welcome and healing thing for your pastor to have someone care enough to ask them how it's going in ministry. Why do they do it? Well, a lot of the times, pastors isolate themselves from the people who they are serving in order to protect themselves. This is a very common thing, especially here in the South, to keep people at an arm's length, to be very friendly, to be very open, be very willing to help others. But when it comes to being vulnerable with other people, pastors are almost taught, there's almost this social stigma that you should not do that you should not be too vulnerable with the congregation in order to protect yourself. And there's a couple different protections that I've seen in my experiences be the reason why pastors would do this. First of all, help can turn into hurt really quick. Sometimes when you're a pastor, you pour yourself into someone. You just absolutely everything that you have, you spend time, you spend some of your personal resources, and you spend an incredible amount of emotional investment pouring into people, helping them, praying for them, discipling them, training them, and then suddenly you can make the decision to change the color of the carpet in the sanctuary and they're gone like that. The help can turn into exposing yourself to more hurt. And so a lot of pastors choose to still do the helpful things of ministry without being vulnerable and without opening themselves up to deep relationships and deep friendships with people in their congregation, so that when they inevitably leave, they won't get as hurt. Now, if this is you, you must be really careful, because this is revealing a scarcity mindset. Ultimately, what you're believing is that God does not have enough resources, does not have enough power in order to keep friends close by. And since you've seen people leave in the past, you're expecting that everyone will do the thing that the people who hurt you did. And that's not the way that we want to approach people as pastors, right? We want to approach people with an abundance mindset. We serve a God who is greater than we can ever ask or imagine or think. And he is an abundant God. And so he is going to give us what we need emotionally and otherwise in order to weather the storms of walking life with people in a real, true, and vulnerable way, and actually being real, legitimate, bosom buddy friends with people in our congregation. Does it open you up for more hurt? Does it open you up for more potential for abandonment? Absolutely. But it also allows God the opportunity to work in ways that we could not possibly even fathom, in incredibly deep ways. So don't shun people away or keep people at an arm's length relationally in order to protect yourself from the help that you're doing turning into hurt. I think another reason that pastors do this is because distance actually, like relational distance, makes it easier to deliver hard truths. Now, this is the one that is for people who have a personality like mine, where I hate conflict. And so if you are struggling with the conflict potential with someone, a lot of times if you're not relationally close to them, it's easy to just see from a bird's eye view that a third impartial party, right, and be able to speak the truth. Now, the problem with this is that we are called and commanded by God to speak the truth in love. And love always requires a relationship. And so it's my point is that it's even more powerful and it's even more effective to speak the truth when it's coming out of love and coming out of relationship. And so diving into deep, real, tangible, actual relationships with the people in the congregation will lead to, when you speak the truth, if they know you, if they like you, and they trust you, and they know that you love them, then the truth that you share will actually have more of an opportunity to make an impact and a greater impact on your congregation and in the people who are sitting in your pews on a Sunday morning. Now, Jesus is a perfect example of this. I mean, of course, he walked with the 12 disciples and he only lost one, but Jesus also lost one. I mean, it was an emotional and visceral thing to be abandoned by and betrayed by one of his closest friends, and that had to absolutely hurt. But you know what? Jesus still knew that Judas was going to betray him, and he still continued to love him faithfully. He didn't withhold any friendship from Judas. Judas was a part of a lot of really, really special, intimate conversations that Jesus had with his 12 disciples, even though he knew he was going to be betrayed by him. And so Jesus was vulnerable until the death. And so what we need to learn by that is that honesty goes both ways. If you want your congregation to be honest with you, then you're going to have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to be honest with them. This past Sunday, I was standing up on stage, and it was my first opportunity since my baby had been born to speak. And after she was born, it was a really stressful birth. We thought we were going to get an epidural, and it didn't happen. And so anyways, I saw my wife go through so much more pain than I'd ever seen any human ever endure, ever. And it was incredible and beautiful and terrifying and emotionally just wrecked me. It was my fourth kid, and it was the only birth story I can say I actually teared up and cried after it was over. And in the midst of all of that, and when I saw my wife suffering, I had this moment where I just said to myself, I don't hate my sin enough. And I said that because I realized that in Genesis 3, at the fall of man, and after Adam and Eve sinned, part of Eve's curse was that she would be cursed with pain in childbirth. And then I saw this massive amount of pain that my wife was going through, and I realized in that moment, this is a curse. This is a curse, and it's supposed to communicate something to us. That this intense level of pain is supposed to communicate that God hates our sin that much. We hurt him. It's a visceral, painful, enduring, helpless feeling to have pain and sin in your life. I don't understand my sin enough. I don't understand how terrible it is. And so I reached new levels of the depths of my own personal depravity and new joy in the amount of grace that Christ has poured out upon me in order to save me from the consequences of that sin by dying on the cross in my place. It's the simple gospel. And I realized it again in a new and in fresh and in a deeper way this past Sunday. And so I was debating before the service whether or not to share that with people. And I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that I was honest enough to say, I hated my sin before, but I didn't hate it like I hate it now. Like I really have a visceral, real hate for sin in my life right now because I saw the curse that it creates. Like, that's a really vulnerable thing to say in front of a group of about 200 people and who knows however many out online, you know? But you know what happened after I said that? I was able to speak with more dads, like have real conversations with more dads after the service than I've ever had. Like, they wanted to come up and be like, that was a light bulb moment for me. I remember how my wife, I'm there with you. And suddenly it's not just, man, I hate my sin more. This is a good thing for me. Suddenly my church, there's a group of us in our church who really hate our sin because of what my wife went through. Like, that's a good thing. That helps me to smell like my sheep. Like, if we're talking about a shepherd should smell like their sheep. The same spiritual awakening that I had at the birth of my daughter about my own personal sin and walk with Christ, now I'm able to share that not just as a story with my church, but now we are walking through spiritual growth and renewal and sanctification together. That's what it means like to smell like your sheep. But it only happened because I was vulnerable with them. And now me and those guys who came up and talked to me afterwards, and a couple of the ladies, we have like a deeper level of friendship bond than we did before. And you know what? I don't feel lonely. I'm not lonely as a pastor. Because the things that I walk through in my life, I open myself up to the other people in my congregation, and then they walk it with me. And then sometimes they walk into my office and they're struggling with something, or God revealed a truth to them, and I'm patient enough to sit down and look them in the eye and listen well, and then I can walk through that same process with them. I've grown so much in my walk with Christ because I was willing to slow down, engage in conversation with the people in my congregation, and find the benefits of not being a lonely pastor. So that's my encouragement to you. I believe that you can be an effective minister of God and still be lonely. Absolutely, you can be effective. But I also think that there are limits to how effective you can be. If you are willing to take the steps that you know that you need to take in order to make yourself vulnerable and to open yourself up to deeper relationships with the people in your congregation, there will not be a limit to the impact of your ministry. So if you want to do that, here's my offer. Go to jasonhunley.com, download my connection assessment, especially if you are a pastor or if you are in leadership at your church. Even if you're in lay leadership and, again, you're concerned about your pastor, or if you think you might wonder if they feel lonely or not, go and find out for yourself. Am I lonely in the church? Because these principles I've talked about, yes, I'm specifically talking to pastors, but this is just normal life. This is good stuff for you to do just in general. All right, download the connection assessment, take it. I will automatically email you a second gift, 31 days to better community. And then let me know how it goes. Start on this journey with me, and let's do it together, and let's find out just how beautiful of a Christian community we can create inside of your church. Let me help you do it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.